what are some of the solutions, if we can shed some light? I mean, we talked about one of them, which is, for example, setting up agreements, setting up processes, setting up infrastructure.
In terms of different solutions, once the planning is done, then you need to say, okay, well, if somebody is disabled or happens to pass away, how does the company come up with the funds to either buy back their portion or buy it out from the spouse? And there's a few different ways. One could be a corporate sinking fund. And there's advantages and disadvantages of that. The advantage is you have funds and you're putting them away all the time. The disadvantage of that is the fact that that money could possibly be better used, expanding the business, because it's sort of like a dead asset, because now it's specifically set aside in the event of either somebody passing away or disabled. But that could be, useful for the company. Another solution could be that once one of these situations happens, somebody passing away or becoming disabled, you go out and get a loan from a financial institution. And there's some pros and cons for that too. First of all, maybe the cons are that you're paying interest on it. But one of the positives is you don't need to put money away. You're actually going out and getting funds from that. The question comes up from the bank standpoint is, now let's say there was two partners and one of those passes away. They may have some concern over the ongoing capabilities of the company if one of those two partners passes away. There's other different types of solutions too. We can customize different insurance solutions that are either owned by the corporation or by the individual. Finally, another solution could be a new investor, making sure that there's a new investor, or maybe doing your due diligence beforehand and recognizing a few different possible investors that could come into the company in the event that, again, somebody passed away or retired or was disabled. So those are some solutions that we can bring to the table.
And I know I've seen over the years, some of those solutions could be complicated, some of them could be simple, depending on the situation itself. Because some it could be a complex solution that could be implemented easily, and could be a simple solution that requires a lot of work because of the personal situation of that person themselves, the business owner. Is that the case, Brian? Do you find that happening?
Yeah, each situation is customized. They're all customized to the individual. You may have a situation where if somebody passes away, you want to bring two people in. Maybe one's a family member, one's an investor. Maybe the investor brings a certain expertise in, and then the family member comes in because they want to have it continue in the family for years and years and years. So each situation is a little bit different.
And one of the things I find with many of my business owner friends and myself, that one of the things we're all interested in lots of times is the legacy you put into the business. What do you want at the end of the day? Lots of times those issues don't get thought of while you're conducting business, because it's on your mind, but there is not exactly a tangible way you could figure it out. And through those conversations, sometimes we can bring attention to the business community that there are solutions out there that can help them with their legacy. And some of those things that you deal with, whether it's through partnership agreements and I think some of the solutions you suggested, Brian, they could actually create that legacy, because that is a sort of a byproduct of the planning itself. Because once you have that conversation where you want to go, it starts to be easy to figure out how to do it, regardless of how complex it is. Would you say that would be the case?
Yeah, once you get going down the path, so to speak, then and you have some direction, it gets easier and easier to move along that path. But you got to start. You have to start, and we'd be happy to have some discussions with you so we can at least get you started in the right direction.
And I think that's cool. I think Tony Robbins calls it cause set in motion. It means you start moving and it goes into motion and you start seeing the results. A lot of the big things we accomplish over the years with our companies is through that process. I mean, that's a process I implement in business on a regular basis. It's movement. And many business owners can identify with that, is that they go out and make a decision, start a process, and sometimes it's not perfect, but through that process, by just virtue of starting it, we find that it ends up somewhere. I think this is no different, because once people have a conversation about what to do if something's to happen, or having an objective of where they want to go with their legacy, with their company, it changes the dynamic, I would say.
It changes the dynamic. And when you're talking about changes, this isn't a static planning process along that path, because things are going to change within the company, or people are going to come and go within the company. So it has to have some flexibility as well. As an example, we had a client that wanted to make sure that his son got into the business, and it was all great going for 4 or 5 years. But then the son said, I don't want to be in, at first the son wanted to be in the business, but then his son said, no, I don't want to be in the business. I want to go out and do something else. So we had to make make some changes. We need flexibility within these plannings.
Yeah, and I guess in a sense, when I think about it, like if a person doesn't know that they have a resource that could use to bounce off those solutions, it really is sort of like lots of times trying to find like an accountant or an attorney. There are plenty of them out there, but really it's not that simple because you got to find the right relationship that makes sense. And I think that's where the probably the value in the conversations. I mean, and I'm just talking from a business perspective in here. Over the years, the way I process things like is that I try and listen to people regarding certain potential solutions, and then I go from there. And I find that if there's an output that's beneficial, I start going down that road. I think that's probably some of the things that we're encouraging people to do in the business community is that if you're thinking that there is an issue when it comes to your legacy, when it comes to your partnerships, when it comes to the people that are surrounding your business, it's important to have a conversation with someone that at least helps you with some information, gives you some guidance. And I think that's what we're trying to help the general public with.
There's three main areas that you need to discuss that are going to happen in the future, and they're going to happen. So you need to have a discussion on it. Number one, a business owner is going to retire. They're both going to retire, but maybe one at a time. For example, if you have one owner that's much younger, another one's older, that's going to happen. Eventually, somebody's going to pass away. That could happen during the life of the business. And number three is disability. And I would say that disability is probably one of the more, I don't want to say complicated, but more emotional issues. Because when somebody retires, that's a great thing. Hey, I'm retiring. I'm all, the business did great. When somebody passes away, it's set in stone. That person passed away. But if somebody gets disabled, a lot of questions have to be asked. For example, let's say you have two partners and they're both 50-50 and they're both working hard at it and the business is thriving. But one of the partners becomes disabled, a car accident, for example, and can't work in the business. So the questions become, how long does he need to be disabled and away from the business before we start considering buying him out? How much do we buy him out for? Are we purchasing him out over a period of time with income from the business? Are we purchasing it from a different sort of solution that we had talked about before? And then, does that amount of money increase over time, or is it a set amount over time? These are a lot of questions when somebody becomes disabled, because the disability could last, if the person's younger, could be 20, 30 years. If they're older, maybe that disability would only be, 10 years or so before they would retire anyway. So a disability, you got to talk about disability because there's a high probability when you look at statistics that somebody will become disabled, and also not only permanently disabled. What if they're only disabled for a short period of time, let's say a couple of years? Can they then buy themselves back into the business? So those are questions that you have to ask regarding a disability.
And it really never ceases to amaze me how many topics revolve around those issues in business that are far from the normal daily business operations. And I think that's one of the reasons why we tend to not to think about these things in a sort of proactive way, because we're focusing on revenues, we're focusing on product, we're focusing on infrastructure, we're focusing on marketing, we're focusing on conversations with the consumer. That's what typically all of us business owners focus on. But when it comes down to actually figuring out some other issues, the issues that could be secondary to that, they don't really relate directly to revenue generation and increasing company size. It really starts to be sort of like removed. And these are actually the thorny issues that could affect a company more than a drop in revenues. Because let's take just the example you just did right now with the partner being disabled. And I can totally see how that could be emotional, especially if that partner is a dear person to you, a friend or somebody you really worked with very well over the years. Where do you go from here? You will probably have to deal with a lot of things, but there are a lot of solutions to that, right, Brian? There are a number of solutions. I shouldn't say a lot, a few solutions that are advanced, because again, you can take these things in a very casual way. And I made my fair share of mistakes of doing things in a sort of not an advanced way. And I looked at the simpler solutions, but sometimes you do need experts to figure out exactly how to put this in a context that makes sense.
It's always very important that you're working with the experts, because the experts have what? The experience in this area. And from that experience, they're able to pull out maybe some areas that as a business owner, you haven't thought about. When you talked a little bit about changes too, what we often find is you need to, over a period of time, look at these documents. And as the value of the business changes and increases or decreases, these plans need to be changed too.
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I found people just going to sort of a run-of-the-mill outfits out there that just have very basic solutions they advertise. And these guys just are templated. They just don't look into every detail. They lack the knowledge and understanding of the deep, advanced issues that relate to a business owner's needs. And that's where it starts to get, I think, in my opinion, sort of a person would be short-sighted when they do that by not thinking about a solution that is comprehensive and by experts and people.